Fukamushi Sencha is a delicious type of Japanese green tea that many people enjoy. It's very easy to prepare, but there are a few things you'll want to keep in mind when preparing it. In this video, we're going to walk you through step by step how to prepare a deep steam sencha and what to look for in the taste. Before we get started, if you're new to the channel, it would really mean a lot to us if you could subscribe and stay tuned for future tea videos. We cover all sorts of tea topics on this channel. Everything from the Japanese tea ceremony to growing conditions of the tea plants. For this episode, we're going to focus on Fukamushi Sencha specifically. Without further ado, let's get started. Okay, so to get started here, what I have is the Murasaki Sencha from Mr. Kawaji. So this is a Fukamushi or deep steam tea. And the reason why I'm telling you this is because the leaf shape really changes during the deep steaming process. So this is steamed for a longer time than the traditional 60 to 90 seconds of a musumushi or normal steam tea. And a Fukamushi is steamed between 90 and 120 seconds. And during that time, you see the leaf particles, they break down. You see some larger leaves here, but along the edges you see a dust. So if I get this out, you see like these more finely broken leaf pieces. This doesn't mean that the tea is bad. It's just indicative of the fact that it is deep steam tea because during the deep steaming process the leaves become more brittle and they're more likely to break down in the package. The reason why this is important is because when it comes to brewing, it's really easy to clog a filter. So what I'm using is a different teapot. It's one with a circular metal filter. Not sure if you can see. There you go. There's a circular metal filter in there, and what's going to happen is if the teapot were to clog close to the spout, the clog would form here, and then the water would be able to move around. So there's actually kind of like a gap between this side of the strainer here and the side of the teapot. So this allows the water to kind of move around whatever clogs may form in the strainer itself. So I have it here about 5 grams. Put this in, a little bit on the edges there. And then I'm going to pour in some water. I'm using 60 degrees Celsius, which is a little cooler. But I like my teas to be a little bit cooler because I don't want them to get too bitter. And so for this, I'm actually going to be using a 45-second steeping. And the reason for that is because the leaf particles, as I mentioned before, are smaller. So that not only affects the clogging of the teapot, but it also makes it infuse quicker because smaller leaf particles have more relative surface area, so they brew a lot quicker. So this only needs 45 seconds. You can go up to a minute, but you don't need it. And you can play around with 45 seconds or a minute, see which one you like the most. You may find that after a minute, it's kind of overbrewed. It has too much flavor because this is a really strong tea. It's meant to be really flavorful. So what I like to do is go for about 45 seconds. Go ahead and pour this out. If I were to use a teapot that has kind of one of those built-in clay filters, it might be very difficult to pour here, but you can see it's easy with the circular filter. So that's why we recommend people to use these Fukamushi style teapots. Make sure I get the last few drops here. You can see the color is a little bit drifting off into the green direction, but it's mostly yellow. And you'll see with the second steeping that this becomes very different. Just get a quick taste here. Yeah, it's very sweet. It's a little bit on this kind of fruitier side, I would say. So kind of like these tropical fruits, maybe a little bit more citrusy fruits, I would say. It does have it does have a little bit of this tartness to it. Kind of like this, also a little bit of this starchy kind of warmer cereal notes to it as well. So it's very interesting, really complex. You gotta have this balance of the kind of the starchier notes as well as the fruitier notes. But it's actually not particularly strong in these steamed vegetable notes, at least in the first steeping, which is typical for these Fukamushi teas. They start off a little bit sweeter, a little bit fruitier in the first brewing. And then as you'll see in the second brewing, which we're going to check out, oops, spilled a little bit there. And to heat up the water, I'm just using a regular kettle. electric kettle. Nothing fancy. It's just something that gets the water to the right temperature. The important thing is that you get something where you can set the temperature so you can be a little more precise. So we'll see in the second steeping here. You see the color really changes. And for the second steeping, just as with other teas, I'm only letting it sit in there for 15 to 20 seconds. 20 seconds is probably best. So what you'll notice here is the color is much greener, and there's a little bit of this kind of essential oil layer on the surface here. That's actually a good sign. So get a quick taste of this. Yeah, it's leaning much more into these citrusy steamed vegetable notes in the second steeping. Some people actually prefer the second steeping. They say it has a little bit more strength to it. I still am probably always going to like the first steeping more, even though the second steeping definitely has more raw strength to it. The first steeping is a little more mellow, a little sweeter, a little more fruity. And of course, with the second steeping, you get that beautiful green color. Yeah, definitely more strength with the second one, which is normally something that you wouldn't notice with something like a gyokuro or a sencha. Normally you get more flavor in the first steeping, but for Fukamushi Sencha, I'm not exactly sure why you get more flavor in the second steeping. Oh wow, yeah, I'm even getting this kind of savory umami flavor with the second steeping, something you'd get in a gyokuro. So first steeping is going to be sweet, fruity, a little bit starchy. Second steeping is going to be more vegetal, more umami, more raw strength, and then a little bit of this citrusy finish, I would say. Just going to go ahead and finish this one up. And then for the third steeping, it's really just a repeat of the second steeping. Putting the same temperature water in, do 20 seconds or so. Hold it up to the light a little bit more. Okay, so this could go either way. Sometimes it gets even more green with the third one. Sometimes it gets a little bit less green. Here it's a little bit less green, it looks like, as far as the taste goes. Yeah, it's just like kind of a weaker version of the second steeping. The tea really kind of peaks in flavor in the second steeping, and then it kind of declines from there. But this is still an enjoyable tea, enjoyable third steeping, I would say. A little bit more on the citrusy and vegetable notes, not having any of that umami that you get with the second steeping. Not a lot of this starchy sweetness or this fruitiness you get with the first steeping. But I would definitely recommend, do all three steepings of this tea and kind of compare how the flavor evolves from brewing to brewing. So this Murasaki Sencha is, as I said before, a deep steam tea from Mr. Kawaji in Hioki City, which is kind of right around Kagoshima. I got to visit him a couple years ago and try a bunch of his teas, and this was one of our favorites that we selected. It's made from the Yutaka Midori. So this is a known cultivar for Fukamushi teas. It's the name translates to abundant green. So it's really famous for having this deep green color, as you can see with some of the brewings here. So definitely a really good tea to have. A lot of complexity. It's fun to watch it evolve from the first to the second to the third. I think the first is definitely my favorite because I'm kind of a fan of these more sweeter, fruitier teas. but I can definitely see how somebody would appreciate the second brewing more because it's got more of that raw strength, and it has some of that umami flavor that I really enjoy. So I hope you guys like this. In another video, maybe we'll compare the circular metal filter to the built-in clay filter, so we can really get a side-by-side comparison of how the two work and why you should be using the circular metal filter when it comes to these Fukamushi teas. Thank you all so much for watching, and let us know what you want to see next. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments below, and until then, we'll see you next time.